Good morning to those of you on the East Coast, and I should say good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast, and good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm Mike Angeletta, President and co-founder of the Online Marketing Institute. I'd like to welcome you to the latest event in our series of online marketing educational webinars. So for today's event, we have an author and keyword marketing expert who will be presenting the first part of an ongoing series on keyword intelligence. Today, we're going to learn how to use keyword research strategies to create more effective and successful search engine optimization and search marketing campaigns. Our presenter for today is Ron Jones. He's an internet marketing consultant, author, trainer, columnist, and owner of Symmetry Internet Marketing Company. Ron has recently written a book called Keyword Intelligence, and then the subline is Keyword Research for Search, Social, and Beyond, on which this webinar series is based upon. He's also a columnist for ClickZ and Search Engine Watch. Ron's actively involved in the SEM community and speaks regularly at conferences and seminars, and he also conducts training workshops for social media marketing, search engine optimization, paid search advertising, and web analytics. So we're in for a treat with a very qualified expert on search marketing today. To close out our preliminaries, I'd like to draw your attention to the chat panel on the bottom left-hand side of your ReadyTalk interface. Feel free to type your questions in as the presentation is underway. We'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible in the Q&A session after the presentation. If for whatever reason you missed part of this webinar or wish to rewatch it, or for that matter share it with your colleagues, no worries, as we will be making this recorded webcast available to you later this week. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ron Jones, our presenter for today. And if we could advance the slide, please.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. We had a small little glitch, so I'm going to say the word next or slide number so we can make sure we're on the same page here. The agenda for today is we're going to, as Mike mentioned, there's so much information to talk about as it relates to keyword research that we've kind of created a series. So there's just no way to really get all of this into kind of a 30-minute kind of a presentation. I do workshops on this that are 4 hours and sometimes 8 hours a day. So we decided to do kind of a series so we can cover everything. The focus of this presentation is really talking about trying to develop a foundation, which is obviously developing strategies and understanding certain principles that will really help you create a foothold as you consider doing keyword research within your own organizations. So we're going to be talking about marketing strategy, defining metrics for success, and a little bit about keyword research process, which we'll go through more details in some future presentations. And then we're going to discuss some principles for keyword research, formulas for success, how to understand keywords and messaging and how they can influence people, keywords in the buying cycle and understanding user intent, long tail keywords, and then just kind of keyword mapping and modeling to the various landing pages. So that's kind of the agenda for today, so I'll jump right in and get started. So this first section will be about really developing a keyword research strategy. So if you go to slide number 3, actually let's go right into slide number 4, which talks about identifying your keyword strategy. So in this slide, as you're considering developing a strategy and using keywords, there's really 2 types of strategies. In this illustration here, the green globes represent kind of a conversion strategy or a branding strategy. A conversion strategy is probably what most of us are interested in. We want people to come to our website. We want them to get on our site and to buy or to download something and that sort of thing. So there's some kind of a conversion or goal in mind. A branding strategy is more or less where you just want to be out there and be visible. You want people to see who you are, and you really kind of reward impressions over kind of leads and conversions, if you will. So the difference there is that, and we'll go into this a little more detail, the kind of keywords you might use for branding strategy would be broad key terms, because you're going to get more searches, but you may not get as many clicks. If you're looking more for a conversion strategy, some of your keywords might be more specific, which tend to be more converting keywords. And so there is, the blue globe there represents what I'd call a hybrid strategy, where you might develop a campaign you might have a specific campaign for converting types of keywords, and then you might have another campaign for branding types of keywords. But it's good to kind of get an idea for what your strategy is as you consider developing and conducting keyword research plan. Okay, next slide. This next is a question that I ask a lot of people when taking them on as a new client, or in some cases in training and so forth, and that is, how do you measure success? Now, a lot of people, you might ask yourself that question. A lot of people come to me and say, well, I measure success by being on page 1. Okay, so it's more of a ranking. I want to get on page 1 with this keyword, and that's my goal. And I would caution you to look beyond the mark there and to say success really comes into, especially if you have an analytics program set up, is really conversions. Okay. Now, if you are if your strategy is branding, then ranking is probably not a bad measure of success, because obviously getting on page 1 means you're really out there and you're being seen as a player. However, if you're a converting strategy, you really need to kind of measure success by user engagement, by conversions, and those kinds of things. And those, you can really only understand that when people get onto when you get onto your analytics program and look at keyword performance. We'll talk about that in a second. This slide actually shows Google Analytics, which most people have, and you can see down below you've got the number of visits, average time on site, percentage of new visits, and bounce rate. We'll cover that a little more in detail. The inset image there shows actually converting goals, goal conversion rate. So you can get an idea what kind of analytics you can actually get if you set those things up properly. Okay? Go to the next slide. Sometimes the Google Analytics and some of these packages offer so much, sometimes all you really want to focus on is just the keyword themselves, and you want to look at the traffic, the average time on site, the bounce rate, and conversions. So what I like to do a lot of times is to really take some of this data and put it into a spreadsheet. I like it doing that because I can manipulate it and kind of make it my own and set it up so that it's, if I've got someone I have to report to, I've got a nice, concise little a report that I can send to folks. But in this illustration here, we've got the keywords. We've got a column for traffic, average time on site, the bounce rate. And to talk a little bit about bounce rate, this is a very metric for success. Essentially, most of you understand probably what bounce rate is, but a high bounce rate, let's say 85%, would represent that 85% of people who are coming to your site are get on a page and then they leave immediately, which suggests that they really aren't engaged. They didn't see anything. They didn't see any clues that this is really what they were looking for, and so they moved on. A lower percentage bounce rate, in this case, you can see we've got 24%, 19%, 17%. This represents more engagement. Less people are leaving when they get to a landing page. And I've been asked the question a few times about what is a good bounce rate. And typically I would say below 25%, 20% is kind of where you want. You're always going to have some kind of a bounce rate, but right in that area is probably more of the sweet spot. And then conversion goals are, obviously you set your goals up so that when someone gets on your website, you make a purchase, or you download a form, or whatever it is that kind of action you want to take, and this represents the conversion rate. So these are some really basic metrics that give you some idea on keyword performance, and you want to kind of maybe set up some goals ahead of time in your strategy to say, we want keywords that have a certain percentage of conversion rate or a certain bounce rate, for instance. And that's something you need to kind of consider ahead of time. The final thing in this example is we sorted this one on conversion, which you notice the keywords are out of order, and what that does, it kind of shows you which keywords are actually performing the best overall, so you can monitor that going forward. Okay, next slide, which is number 7. Now, I'm going to talk about this summarily, and we're going to go into this in a lot more detail in future webinars. But I'd like to kind of show you, and I'm going to preface this by saying a keyword research process. You may have conducted keyword research before. You might have a slightly different process. generally speaking, what I have found that this process here actually works really well, and that is to first start off with going out there and finding all the possible keywords that might even be considered for a campaign for you. This is where you basically could, grab a spreadsheet. You can use a keyword tool. You can go out and use thesauruses. You can use certain methods and processes like prefixing and suffixing and some other kinds of things that I'll talk about later to really identify all the different possibilities. You don't judge anything. You don't rule anything out. You basically load this full of all the different possibilities. And then once you've kind of brainstormed and you've exhausted all your different areas to finding new keywords, then you go through this process of refining. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a future one, but suffice it to say that I have some formulas and some things that you can use that you can go through and actually narrow that down to a concise list, and you can identify keywords that would likely perform better for you. So essentially you're making judgments based on things like how relevant these keywords are to your business, how specific or how broad, which ties into your strategy that we just talked about a minute ago. You look at competition and like search volume. Those are the kind of factors you look at to kind of judge against in how you refine. The next one is categorization, and this is yet again another webinar. We'll talk about this in more detail. There's some terms out there called keyword modeling or keyword segmentation. This is where you kind of group keywords together into like themes, if you will, centered around categories or user intent, so that these can be mapped to the right landing pages. They can be mapped to an AdWords campaign. They can be mapped to how you set up your site structure and all kinds of things. So it really works out well. And then finally, the last one is testing performance. This is actually a big one. Testing performance is very important, that you find a way to test your keywords to see if they are really performing for you. Without that, you can go through this process all you want, but until you kind of test and validate your keywords, you really don't want to use them in full force, if you will, because you might not have the correct, you might be driving traffic to your website, but you might discover that, hey, these keywords are drawing the wrong traffic. The people that are coming in we're getting traffic, but they're not converting, or they're not engaged, if you will. Okay, so this represents kind of and then obviously once you're done testing, you can go back and modify your categories or segments. You can go back and modify and refine your list even more based on what you've learned from testing. So this represents that, and again, we're going to go into more specific detail on each of these in future webinars. Okay. Now, slide 8 really represents, we're kind of switching gears now to the idea of principles of keyword research. And again, these are some very interesting models on how you can understand, as you're conducting keyword research, really some things that kind of create a foundation to let you know, as you're making decisions on developing and using different keywords in your campaigns. All right, so slide number 9. This is what I call kind of the secret formula for success, and this has 3 parts to it. So part 1 is, I just talked a little bit about the idea of picking the right keywords and testing those. I've run into people who have jumped on a keyword tool, and they typed in a seed keyword. They had a lot of suggested keywords that came out, and they exported that to a spreadsheet. Kind of looked it over and made a few changes, and all automatically, boom, that was their campaign. And they ran an SEO and maybe even PPC campaigns off of that, without really testing or going through and refining and so forth. And a lot of times what they have found is that, especially for SEO, it might take you 6 months or longer to get ranked for certain keywords, and it's 6 months down the road, you're using keywords like that, and you realize again, hey, I might be drawing traffic to that to my site, but these people are not, they're not converting, they're not engaged at all. And so in that case, you're really failure to do that really, it's costing you time and money and productivity. So take the time to really conduct keyword research. And I've asked people before, it's another question I've asked is keyword research strategic or is it tactical? A lot of people think keyword research is tactical because, all the time it takes and it can be mundane and tedious. But it is well worth the time. I can attest to this. In many cases, I've worked with a lot of clients. Take the time to really and plan to conduct a thorough keyword research from the beginning and pick the right keywords. It really help you out. The next one, part 2 of this success formula in slide number 10, is keywords should be incorporated into relevant destination content. Now you have to ask yourself, if you type in a keyword to a search engine and you see the listings on the search engine results page and you see a listing and might have that keyword in it, you click on that and you go to maybe someone's home page, or you go to a page that doesn't really have the keywords or any images or anything that related to those keywords on that page. What are you going to do? You're going to leave. Okay, you're going to bolt and move on to the next listing. The landing pages absolutely need to be optimized for keywords. You need to have relevant keywords. The keywords that drew that traffic to that specific landing page needs to have those keywords in them. Now, to bring it all together, slide number 11. So the success formula really basically is, and this is obviously optimized for those who are, which is most of us, who are looking for a conversion strategy, and that is choosing the right keywords plus relevant destination content equals higher conversions. It's pretty simple if you think about it, but those two combinations of having the right keywords and right destination content is really a magic formula that will represent higher returns for you. And this day and age, when everyone's looking at ROI and performance and that sort of thing, this is a very important success formula. So it's a principle that I like to start off with. The next principle, slide number 12, is the influence. And this is, bear with me as I kind of walk through this process. But you've got some, if you look at these circles here with different notes on them, let's say, for instance, that you see a billboard, you see a TV ad or something, and all of a sudden you get there's some interest in a product. Okay, well, and you're now interested in either purchasing that at some point. So you have in your brain, your head, some kind of expectation of what that is. You might have an expectation. You might even visualize this product in your mind. You might even visualize the landing page you might land on that's going to give you comparisons of that and other products so you can make an informed decision. The problem is when you get to a web page, a search engine, you have to kind of take that expectation and distill it down into what I call the language of search, and that is keywords. So you have to take this expectation and say, okay, what keywords am I going to type in to get me this landing page that has the content I'm looking for so I can continue researching and ultimately make a decision. So finally you get a search engine results page and you get listings and you click on one and you go to a landing page and you might go back and forth and ultimately you end up with a conversion. That's kind of the process that we go through. Now, what I'd like to emphasize on this slide is the concept of what I call unified messaging. What if not only just your SEO team, your PPC team, but what if your ad agency, your PR agency, you folks who are doing commercials, traditional kind of advertising, maybe people are doing blogging, all the people who are doing any kind of messaging for you in any way, what if they were to consistently use your top targeted keywords? Okay? If that was to happen, ultimately, as people see an article, they see a TV ad, and consistently see this messaging and it's consistent, you can actually influence the type of keywords when they get to a search engine you can actually, they don't have to really kind of figure out which keywords. You've already told them which keywords they're going to use, because you've consistently in your messaging have helped them understand this is what we're all about. And of course, those are the keywords that you're optimizing for, and hopefully you've got the higher ranking for, so you can have better visibility. So this idea of unified messaging, I think, is actually very key, if anything, just to get your whole organization on board. Now, on that slide, there's a thing called keyword relevancy, which is, I just want to reemphasize the fact that if you use a keyword to get people to a search engine, and then you need that keyword also needs to be a part of the listing or the ad. It also needs to be on the landing page, et cetera, et cetera. That keyword needs to be relevancy all the way through that whole process. So I'm trying to emphasize that. Now, when I wrote the book, Keyword Intelligence, let's move to slide number 13. I asked a lot of companies, I said, do you even share the keyword research that you do with others? And the answer was no. We just do the keyword research and we use it for SEO and PPC, and that's it. I said, so I started exploring some ideas on how you could actually share that. So this is an idea that comes from the book, and it's called a keyword research brief. Keyword research brief is really, consider it as like an executive summary. An executive summary would be just a page or two that has some key information, like maybe some information about your target audience or personas, the core keywords, and maybe a little bit of data, some key landing pages, and some other things here like competition, usage tips, and so forth, that you could give to some of these people. You could give it to your PR agency, you could give it to your ad agency, give it to copywriters, article writers, bloggers, anyone doing social media, so that as they're writing content, you've given them kind of a quick little simple guide on the keywords you want to use, and thus you can help to perpetuate this idea of unified messaging. Now, the next two slides, let's go to slide 14. This is just a kind of a snapshot of a keyword brief that I've kind of put together as an example. So you can see here we've created a persona of a bike company. So we've got like the newbie who basically has just started his search. You got the rookie and the peddler, and I won't go through all that, but it gives everyone an idea of what the personas are and a description of what their intent is. And then of course you've got your core keywords and some data. So you've got your keywords, and you've got some information on relevance and monthly searches, and maybe what persona is associated or mapped to that keyword, percentage of traffic on the site, and maybe some trending kind of data. So you can see that just a quick glance at some of this gives them an idea on keywords they may want to use if they're putting together an article or a paid search campaign or what have you. The next one, slide number 15, is just another snapshot of that same report. You can see here we've got the keywords, and then we've got the mapped, the URLs or the landing pages essentially that are associated with those keywords. And then some keyword usage tips. A lot of people don't know that this is part of link building, but a lot of people don't know that the keyword that is that you're targeting when you're writing an article or a press release, if you will, needs to be kind of underlined and linked to the landing page that's associated with it. A lot of people type in the word, click here, and that's the link. And so some simple little usage tips on how to write and set up these keywords might also be kind of important for them. But really no more than 2 pages, and I think you get the idea that something like this, and this is just, again, it's a principle. You can adopt and create something on your own, but I think you get the idea on how this could probably be useful for you. Okay, let's go to slide 16. Now, this slide is really interesting because keywords can really give us some insight into what people are looking for. What is their overall intent? So if you look at the 4 circles in the middle, this kind of follows the 4 circles or the 5 or 6 circles we just went through earlier. You have initial search, refined search, and ultimately a conversion. Typically when someone goes to a search engine and they type in they're at the beginning of their buy cycle, if you will, they might type in something like camera, digital camera, and these are broad terms. Okay, so what do? We've all been there. We've typed in some broad terms, and we look at the results, and we go, wow, this is all over the place. There's something from this city and this city over here, and let me go back and add something to it. So I might add a prefix or suffix to it and say affordable digital camera or black, or give it some kind of a more specific term so that I can kind of narrow things down. So we finally get to some content that gives us some information. So we start researching some of this information. We look at comparisons between different kind of cameras, and we kind of start settling in on, hey, this is the one or two specific cameras that I'm really looking for. So we go back to the search engine and we type in Canon EOS Mark III. Okay, so now we've got a very specific long tail, which I'll talk about in a second, term, a very specific term. And if you now look over at that arrow on the left side of the circles, you'll see we've got transactional, informational. We started, our intent at the beginning was really we're just gathering information, so we use broad terms. Broad terms really, if I type in a broad term, it really suggests that I'm at the beginning of my buy cycle. I'm just gathering information, kind of testing things out to see what's out there. And then as I go through this process, I switch from informational to transactional. If I type in Canon EOS Mark III, that means that I've done my research. I know exactly what I'm looking for, and I'm probably looking for who's got the best price and who's got a trusted website, maybe some other things, and I'm ready to buy. So the idea behind this is to understand user intent, and then we'll talk about I'll talk about the importance of keyword mapping here in a second. But the important things is if you study your analytics and you see what keywords are driving traffic to your website, are they informational kind of keywords? Are they transactional kind of keywords? And if so, are you leading them to the right place? Now let's go to slide number 17. This is the long tail. Now, a lot of people have heard this term before. This is really kind of to further emphasize this idea of specific terms versus long tail terms. You can see that typically when you type in long tail, or I'm sorry, broad terms, you're going to get a lot more search results. And if your strategy is a branding strategy, then that's probably something you want to gravitate towards, because you're not going to get as many clicks. Remember, we talked about that scenario where you type in a broad term and you see lots of results, and you may not click. You basically go back and type in another term. But if you're at the top of that page or whatever, and you're visible, you're leaving an impression with people that, there's a company that's a player, and that helps with the whole branding process. However, as you become more specific, you have less number of searches, but you're going to get you get more specific with your search term. And as I said before, the more specific with the previous slide, the more specific you are with your search terms, the higher the conversions will be. So you may not have as many searches, but the number of searches and the traffic you draw to your website are going to be higher conversions. And ultimately, at the end of the game, you're looking for not just traffic and not just visit the number one on certain pages. You're looking for conversions, and you're looking to draw only those people who are ready to convert. Okay. Now, the last slide here is kind of going back, slide number 18, and that is to kind of say it's important that now that you understand user intent and you understand the kind of keywords that people are using, you want to draw them to the right landing page. How many times have you clicked on a listing, especially if you're in a transaction, you type in something specific and it's taken you to just the home page? Isn't that kind of aggravating? Because now you got to kind of search on their website for what you're looking for, and a lot of people will bolt and say, forget this, I'm going to move on. You want to make sure as you study your analytics and you see which kind of keywords people are typing in, you want to take them to the right page. if they're informational, take them to pages that are, maybe there's an article or some kind of page that is basic, if you will, that helps to explain, kind of gets the layout of the land of your product base or services. And it's okay that on that landing page for those informational people that come there is to, have a little nudge, if you will, that nudges them to the next page, which gets a little more specific, and ultimately you nudge them to a specific page, like a specific product page with pricing information and so forth, and then you can kind of steer them towards a conversion. But make sure that the beginning page, landing page, is a page that is informational in nature. That said, if someone is typing in some very specific product keywords, take them exactly to that product page with information. You might have some trust badges like certified or we're safe with credit cards, or we're associated with some other big brands, anything that kind of helps them feel trust that you're a trusted source. And then, of course, have pricing information and, of course, the Buy Me Now button with other related products or whatever you want to. But that's really what it's all about. And if you're able to map those keywords to the right landing pages, if you will, you're going to have higher success rate and higher conversions, which is what it's all about. So slide 19 is just kind of a summary to kind of wrap things up here. We've talked about some strategic kinds of things that you need to kind of define up front and understand how you want to measure success, what strategy you kind of want to go after for your keywords. We've talked about some principles of keyword research that are good to understand as you conduct and use keywords. And as Mike said earlier, we've got, I believe, 5 more webinars that get into specific details into keyword tools. We're going to talk about very specifics on refining keyword searches. We're going to talk about how to use keywords for content marketing, and I believe setting up information architecture, site structures using keywords, and keyword modeling. So those are some things to look forward to. I would ask you that I know we're going to go into some questions here in a second, but if there's specifics that you would like to hear in future webinars that you'd like to cover in more detail, please contact us and let us know, and we can try to make sure those get included in some of those presentations. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mike for some questions.
Thanks, Ron. And yeah, I do want to remind all of our attendees, we are just beginning to dive into keyword intelligence, and we're looking forward to many more webinars getting into further strategies and tactics on keyword intelligence. For now, though, we do have some good questions that I'd like to address as part of our Q&A session here. So, Ron, I'm going to start with some of our questions here. The first one's pretty basic. How often should we actually go through the process of doing keyword research? Is this sort of a once-a-year thing? Is it weekly? Any best practices related to frequency of keyword research?
Okay. Well, generally speaking, if you're conducting kind of a full-blown keyword research process, I would do that at least every 6 months to years, probably pushing it. Especially if you do it per year, there's certain trends that come up and can cause some keywords to be less performing than they were when you did your first research study. But I think that for the most part, I would suggest that you're maybe a little more aggressive, and as you have your keyword research, your master set of keywords, if you will, I would compare them against your analytics on a monthly basis. That way you can see how well things are performing, and your refined set of keywords or your targeted keywords. You might make a little course correction on some of those, or note the time of year. Again, as you study, there's certain trends that come out that like we're in tax season now. There's Christmas. There's seasonal kind of things that happen that might adjust the the frequency of how often some of these keywords are searched on and so forth. So I would do it on a monthly basis, but at the very least every 6 months and a year at the very, very least. So.
And related to doing the actual research, now that we've maybe researched some keywords and we're out there testing them, what are some good ways that you can suggest to our audience members on testing those keywords that we found as good candidates as part of our keyword research process?
What I typically like to use is develop a, if I'm working with a client, I like to suggest to them at the beginning that they take a small percentage of their budget, 5, maybe 10% of their budget, and allocate it for a paid search campaign. Paid search campaign will allow them to develop, to basically take some of their keywords, test those keywords, because the paid search campaign will draw traffic to your website immediately. And then what you can do is you can study your analytics to say, okay, we've brought this traffic to our site. Are these people converting? Are they engaged? And if not, we may demote that keyword and look at other keywords. But that's a really good way to kind of test keywords to make sure that they're actually performing. Again, you can do all your best guesses and try different methods for trying to pick the right keywords to begin with. But unless you really test them against your metrics that we talked about in our strategy part, you really won't know totally until you actually get traffic to your site and see what people do. And PPC is a great way to do that.
Now, this is always a burning question in all of our webinars, and I suspect you're probably going to dive deeper into this one in one of your future webinars in the series, but I'll ask the question just the same. Any comments on the tool set that folks should use when doing keyword research? Whether or not it's free or enterprise level doesn't really matter. There's some questions and curiosity about the tool sets people can bring to the table doing their keyword research.
Okay. That is a loaded question, and I will touch on that here in a second. But that is a complete whole webinar is keyword tools. So suffice it to say that there are free tools out there. There are enterprise level tools. Here are a couple quick tips to not give away too much of the next webinar. But you want to first take a look at where people are getting their data from. Like, for instance, if you use the Google keyword tool, the AdWords keyword tool, it's obvious that data is coming from Google. Okay, if you're using something like Trillian's keyword discovery tool, you're actually gathering data from all search engines. So you're not just getting Google's information from their database. You're getting information from a multiple set. So when you type in a seed keyword and you see keywords there, you can actually, it's representative of all search engines. The other little tip that I would give you is I would recommend using more than one keyword tool if you can. A big question that I get a lot of times is, I go to the Google keyword tool and I type in a keyword and I get some results, and then I use another keyword tool and the results are completely different. What's up with that? And again, I'll address that a little bit more in detail in another webinar, but that's where you're not going to get the same information. But if you do kind of a triage and you're using multiple keyword tools, you can actually kind of take that information a little bit with a grain of salt and understand kind of in relationship. So if I say I type in a keyword, if I'm looking at researching two keywords, and I see that generally speaking, this first keyword has 10% more search results or search volume than this other keyword, you're looking at ratios and you're looking at the relevancy between, not relevancy, you're looking at the relationship between those keywords, not so much by the exact number, but by kind of percentage, if you will. And so that gives you an idea that this keyword is bringing in 10% more search volume than this other keyword. But as you use one or two or three keyword tools, it's going to give you a little bit more information. I could talk on this for another 2 or 3 hours, but
well, we got a whole other webinar, like you said, on that.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into some methodologies, specific tools, how they work, where they get their data from, and that's forthcoming.
Great. And for all those attendees still here, we will definitely be sharing the schedule for the remaining series. This is sort of a very wide open question, but obviously the keyword universe is potentially ginormous. It's huge. How do we organize and stay on top of all of our keywords? A company might have multiple brands, different product lines, different functional groups. Any sort of best practices on how best to kind of get a grasp on managing the keyword universe?
Yes. I kind of alluded to this early on, and that is I typically like using a spreadsheet. Now, if you're a small company and you have a small set of keywords, spreadsheet is perfect because you can really manipulate them. If you got a large set of keywords and you're a large company and you got lots of brands, you can still do some things with a spreadsheet. And there's very few tools out there that actually are management tools. They're all tools that help you find keywords and get information. But as it relates to managing them for your site, I typically just gravitate towards a spreadsheet. And you can do some really simple things with a spreadsheet, or you can get into pivot tables and APIs to pull data into your spreadsheet and turn your spreadsheet into kind of a master tracker of keywords and manipulate things pretty well. You need kind of an Excel expert and someone with a little bit of programming skills to set up your APIs and so forth. But you can pull data from different keyword tools and use the spreadsheet as kind of your dashboard, if you will. And so you can get really complex with a spreadsheet, or you can be kind of simplistic with a spreadsheet using some basic formulas. So I typically like to use a spreadsheet because I like to see the data the way I like to see it. You're going to like to see the data the way you want to see it. And what few tools are out there, sometimes you're stuck with the way the people who develop the tool like to see the data. So anyway, so the spreadsheet is kind of where I would gravitate towards.
Okay. So we have a few more, maybe slightly more detailed and tactical questions, but we'll touch on them anyways. And again, I suspect you're going to hit into the greater details on some subsequent webinars here. We had a few questions about metrics. What's a good conversion rate? What's an acceptable bounce rate? So I think rather than looking for specific numbers, could you maybe give our audience some general guidelines on how they can best determine for their business what might be a good conversion rate or bounce rate?
Well, I'll give you some actual numbers. I think generally speaking, in my experience, and again, you're right, it's different for different companies. In my experience, 4 to 5, 6% conversion rate is good. And you might have popular products where you might have 10, 20% conversion rate. I mean, I think what you're going to see is that as you apply some of these principles we talked about, you're going to see your conversion rates go higher and higher because you're getting you're getting more traffic that is converting traffic, and you're likely to see higher conversion rates. So that's why I would really that's why I talked about principles here at the beginning. Bounce rates, for instance, like I said, I think I mentioned this earlier before, I like to keep things at 20% or lower. So it's very specific. If you have a bounce rate that's over 20%, I would really do what you can. Understand that traffic, driving traffic to your website is a function of SEO, paid search, and those things that are what I call drive to site. The channels you use to drive traffic to your website, and click-through rates are all part of that process. If you have people coming to your site and you have low bounce rate or high bounce rates, that's a function of your website and the content on your website. So if you have a high bounce rate, let's say 60%, 80%, or whatever, that means that people came to your site and did not see something that interests them. So you have to go back to your website, your landing page, and modify your content to provide a better user experience. And then you go back, a few weeks later and monitor that, and you can see you go from 80 to 60, and then you modify it a little bit more, and you go from 60 to 30. And as you continue monitoring your analytics and making course corrections, you can dial that down to 20% or less, and that's kind of, in my opinion, the sweet spot. But again, it's going to be different for different companies. But I think those are the main areas that I would focus on. But it's an ongoing process, and the key, the principle, is you got to constantly be looking at your analytics to see, after you make a change, how does that change impact, the bounce rate or the conversion rate, and then continue dialing that in so it's in the little sweet spot, and you've got things where you want them.
Great. So, Ron, we're almost out of time for a Q&A. I do want to ask one last question that might address some of our still pending questions from our attendees, and that is, what can we expect in the rest of our Keyword Intelligence webinar series that you'll be presenting?
Oh, so you want me to kind of cover some of the content we'll be covering?
Yeah, please. I think, for instance, the tools and maybe some other things.
Well, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but I'll go from memory. There's going to be a whole webinar just on tools itself, the use of tools. We'll talk about, we'll have screenshots of different tools and some methodologies and approaches. There'll be one on what you can, there'll be one on actually we talked about the keyword research process, so we're going to talk about some methodologies for finding keywords, refining the keywords, and we'll go through an actual spreadsheet and a study on actually how to do that. We're going to, the whole categorization or what we might call keyword modeling is going to be some content we're going to cover. So we're going to talk about how you can actually group keywords together, how you can model them and set them up for PPC campaigns, for site architecture, so that you can further help mapping your keywords to the right landing pages. Like I said, content management, and also there's another one in there. It's eluding me. Those are some of the kind of things we're going to be kind of going over. Oh, we'll also have one on social media, how to use keywords. From learning about social media, keywords that are used in social media to help us understand more about keywords, and also how to use keywords in social media channels like Facebook and LinkedIn and some of the others, blogs and so forth. And I believe that's most of it. I'm probably missing one or two points there. But
that's all right. Sounds like plenty.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Good. Well, we've got a lot to look forward to then. This is going to conclude our Q&A session. I do want to thank our speaker, Ron Jones, and we look forward to listening to him in the future parts of this Keyword Intelligence webinar series. And I also do want to encourage our attendees that if you do like this kind of educational content and material, there's a lot more where that came from and a lot more you can look forward to. And right now, for all attendees, we're offering a free membership into the Online Marketing Institute, which will give you immediate and instant access to expert Ask the Question forums and additional webcasts and workshops and a ton of other learning opportunities in the online marketing space. Once again, thank you, Ron, for the very informative presentation. We look forward to your future ones. And thank you all for attending.